Welcome to Season 2, Episode 8 of the BBL Show, the place for all British Basketball League related news. You know by now, I am Jay Marriott. He is Drew Lasker. Lasker? You're a Lasker.
And it's flustered today, mate?
Oh, we're all right. We're allowed to get names wrong every now and again. All right. And it's league predictions time. So let's welcome into the room star of the Sky Sports BBL commentary team, carrying the rest of the group. Welcome to the show, Big Tony Rowe. How are you, my mate?
I'm doing well, thanks, fellas. And as always, lovely to be in your company on the BBL show. Big fan.
Yes, indeed, man. Welcome. I'm glad that I'm around this time because last year you were here on the show nearly a year to the date, but obviously I missed because I was out with COVID. So I'm glad to be healthy, to be in your presence this time around, my man. Welcome.
No, I feel like you've been depriving me of some airtime, Drew. So I hope you make it up this year and get on the Sky Sports roster and be with me week in, week out.
Yeah, well, luckily, like my back's getting a little bit better. How much I was carrying him last year. Now he's retired. He's doing quite a bit. But anyway, you will be with us for the entirety of the show, which is something new for us. So buckle up. We have hot topics. We have buy or sell. We have player of the week nominations. We have who, where, and what the hell. We have league predictions, and we also have the Lasker Lookback. But first, it's time for your social media spy. It's the Marriott Minute. Okay, let's start with player movements. In Glasgow, we saw Elijah Mini move out, and in comes Canadian Tyrell Green. Lucian Christophis leaves Sheffield Sharks. Terrell Vincent is out at Newcastle. A few things came up for Leicester Riders, starting with assistant coach Mark Jarram and head coach of Division 1 Loughborough Riders will be leaving his role. Anthony, I'm going to pull you into this one just to give us the gravity of just what an unbelievable job he has done.
It's been exactly that, Jay. You know, we look at Loughborough University for their prowess in sport, but basketball's always been one of those sports they just never been able to get it done. Never won a Bucks championship or Booster championship or how far you want to go back, until Mark Jarram came to hire him up there, and since then, since the first one, he's won 5 in a row. I don't care what standard you play at. When you win 5 consecutive championships in a row, that is something incredibly special. And these Buck teams aren't jokes either. As we know, they're many times are loaded with BBL players, not just BBL players. I mean, good BBL players. So he's done a remarkable job. He was actually assistant coach my first year at Leicester Riders, so I really got to know him. And he was really good for me in my rehabilitation and trying to get myself back into the pro team as well. And I got to be a part of the first ever Bucks winning Loughborough University Championship. So I owe a great deal to Mark Jarram, and I congratulate him on a stellar career and wish him all the best in the future.
Unbelievable. Coach Jarram, best of luck from all of us here at the show. Check out the Riders' newly refurbed changing room. So Sam Neater said it's the little off-the-court touches that adds to being one of the most desirable destinations for a player. And dare he say it, professional. Also saw a great photo of Coach Rob P. back in his playing days, a blast from the past, 94-95 season for New Hampshire. Love that one. I'm sure that one's going to come up about now. Plymouth Patriots, we've been accused of not speaking about them enough. Losing records are one thing, and we know the restraints they are under, but losing your mascot, the most iconic mascot in BBL history, has been big news out of Plymouth. There might not be many in Plymouth who can give you a player's name, but Foxy was truly bigger than the club. Saying goodbye in Wednesday's loss to Bristol Flyers, is this the end for our furry friend? Lastly, you know I love my Druisms. He needs his own show, starting with his parenting skills, catching skills, that is, as his son tries to run off some steps. Mrs. Lasker, she's still the best troll in all of these instances, simply said, would never have happened if she was there. And then the fun didn't stop there because he took his wife's keys with him, forcing her to get an Uber. And that made sure that he was straight in the Lasker doghouse. Retired, but very much alive. And that's this week's Marriott Minute. I'm always watching.
Full of great stuff there in the Marriott Minute, my man. And yeah, I got a madhouse, man. It's always something going on in my house. And I will tell you, when I was coaching and I saw I had 5 missed calls and I called the wife and she was like, please don't tell me you have your keys. And I check in my pocket and I had them. I almost bleeped myself.
You did an IG
Yeah.
poll.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great thing it's 2021 because if this was like 6 years ago, I mean, I don't know what I would have done. I mean, and to make matters worse was it was costume day at school, so they were rushing around. My daughter forgot her witch hat, so I felt so bad. I just left practice, went home, got her witch hat, took it to school, and yeah, survived to live another day. But you guys know what I'm talking
We've
about.
all
But
been there, mate. We've all been
yeah,
there.
yeah, great stuff, my man. But let's transition into hot topics. A lot of great stuff to talk about this week, and I want to start off with a stat that's pretty unique right now. So currently, we got 5 players shooting over 50% from the three. Kujini at London. We got Dan Clark at Manchester. Mark Levin at Leicester. Louis Sayers and Patrick Whelan. I could only go back to 2014, 2015, but no one has ever shot an entire season over 50%. Just to give you some perspective, Jeremy Hemsley of the Sheffield Sharks shot 46% last year and led the league. So coming at you first, Jay, how likely is it that any one of these players, if you had to choose one of these players, which one do you think is more likely to shoot over 50%?
So I think putting me on the spot, I think if you look at them, they're all fantastic shooters. And I know that Kujini's been getting a lot of love, rightly so, for the way that he's been shooting the ball lately. But if anyone's going to shoot over 50%, I would have to say probably Dan Clark, only because I think that his shot selection out of the 5 will probably be much more conservative than the others. So he's not really a guy that's going to take a bad shot. Whereas I think those other guys, they're paid to shoot. That's what they're there to do, and they're volume shooters as well, a lot of them. So I would probably say if there's anyone that's got a chance of shooting over 50%, probably Dan Clark, because of positional reasons.
Yeah, that's a good point there. And what about you?
Yeah, I have to echo Jay on this one. Dan Clark, just because he's going to get a lot of those low post opportunities as well, high efficient shots around the rim. But also I'd say Mark Levin as well, because he's in a system there that they're going to need him to get higher percentage shots, and he's going to shoot the 3-ball, yes, but the majority of his threes are going to be open. And I think he's got a point guard in Gino Crandall that's going to find him those easy buckets as well. So I think he's got a good opportunity. He's kind of a 3-4 and probably going to be played more at the 4 position. So again, it's going to be a bunch more higher percentage shots there for him.
Yeah, good point, fellas. I agree with your point, Jay and Clark. And I got a chance to watch him on Friday night. Actually, my first time meeting him in person after the game and actually watching him live. And man, he is a big fella. And I think you're right. And he has a good opportunity in doing it because all of his threes are going to come from the top of the key, which is essentially one of the easiest spots to shoot threes. So, and then when you're 6'10" as well, and like I mentioned on here before, the bigs in this league are just going to really struggle to guard them. I saw it with our Newcastle Eagles. They think that they're close, and it's not close enough. But one name that I want to shout is I think has a good chance is Kujini. The reason being is because as great as he is simply a role player for London. And he's an afterthought, which is crazy to believe. And so he's going to get a lot of open threes, except when he plays the Leicester Riders. So I could see him having a big year and getting close to that mark. But moving on to the next hot topic, Jay, you mentioned it in your Marriott Minute. Ant, obviously the Newcastle Eagles just released American forward Terrell Vinson. So what are your initial thoughts about that?
I don't know. I always I don't think I could ever be a BBL coach because I really struggle with letting people go. But I think it was inevitable. I think it had to happen. I think for me the test was when your team is depleted and import players already have such a responsibility anyway, and you look to them really to carry the load on offense. But I think when that Newcastle Eagles team was depleted, I saw the other import players step up. Vincent, for instance, I just didn't see enough of it, and it was really strange because he would miss a real easy chippy, a layup under the basket, and then he would do something not very smart, and then the next play he would hit a three in someone's face, and you think, I ripped that guy off 2 plays ago, and then he just goes and do something quite remarkable. So I'm kind of, in my mind, I'm wrestling in my mind thinking, this guy might be legit. Maybe he's just not settled in yet. But I think it's crisis stations in Newcastle Eagles because they're Newcastle Eagles, right? You know, pretty much anyone else, you think, okay, it's early in the season, BBL Cup, they've had their issues, blah, blah, blah. But I think with that being said, it was just too, I think he had a great opportunity to do something really special, and he just wasn't able to do it quickly enough. And that's why the decision's been made. And I don't think it's the wrong decision.
Jay?
Yeah, you know, like if you're gonna go in the land of the tweets, you know, like you got to be careful as to what's coming back. So obviously let his frustrations be known. So that kind of let everybody know that there was some sort of issue or there was some sort of pressure on him. But yeah, Newcastle aren't just gonna sit there, you know, take it lying down. I think they're in a really unique position. Like they've never had to think like this before. But you know, as Ant says, like one of the worst parts in the business, isn't it, is having to replace players and also trying to figure out, you know, should you be patient, shouldn't you be patient? So like Ant's saying, is you're kind of sitting on the fence because you see a player in there, and obviously he was a great contributor when he was at the Rocks in the season that in their mind they won the title. So yeah, I mean, very 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 difficult, but it's all going to hinge also on the health of Fletch, right? You know, how much they're going to have to rejig this lineup for what length of time. But probably I agree with Ant. It's probably the right thing to do is push the button early. It's just the cup that's gone, but you guys expect silverware, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, when you come to the Newcastle Eagles, it's win or else. And unfortunately for him, he had to be the domino to fall when you're 1-7, I believe. And unfortunately, you know, I just told him after Friday night, you know, good job, way to shoot. That was kind of his coming out party at home. I think he had 22 points, but it was just a little too late. And I agree totally with you. I agree totally with both of you guys. Firstly, Jay, talking about the tweet. When you tweet something like that, the next game or the next chance you get an opportunity, you better ball out. And just to find out, you know, Fletch goes down, or no, before that, actually, half the team goes down with COVID. So all of a sudden, you're thrust back into the limelight. And, you know, for me, it was the Glasgow game that did it for me. You know, you're returning back to your old team, you know, a game that I felt like Newcastle could have won if they had one more guy come to the party. You got Corey Johnson, Wes Person scoring over 30. And for him not even to hit double figures, I believe he finished with 9 points. It just wasn't good enough for an American. So, you know, that was kind of the nail in the coffin in my eyes. But, you know, something had to change, you know, regardless of the situation to start. Everybody's been in the same boat with late starts and visas, et cetera. You know, you got to make a change because these games are coming thick and fast. And we haven't even seen London or Leicester yet, and you're struggling in the North Group. So, you know, tough decision there by Ian McLeod, but one that I think that had to be done. But great points all around, fellas. But let's move on to our next segment. Buy or sell. Corey, drop that beat. And my first question coming to you first, Jay. Andrew Lawrence and Robert Gilchrist, okay, are you buying or selling that they remain at Surrey the entire season?
I'm like taking all my chips. They're all going over to the right-hand side. I am selling.
All
I do not
in.
see either of those two players. This is what Surrey do, right? They pick up some guys, they rehabilitate them, and they get rewarded by, you know, sadly, two players that are powering them to a win the other day. Like I can see them very much going out the window. And sorry, guys.
And Jay's selling. Ant, are you buying or selling?
Golly, I just don't get it. I'm still like, I'm still kind of on the. I don't get what they're trying to do there. It reminds me of football, like, you know, when players get loaned out to other clubs and stuff. But in basketball, two players can be, it is 40% of your team. So it's just such a massive chunk. So I don't get it. And it's been a revolving door down there as well. So I like Andrew Lawrence just because he's been out for so long, and you see little snippets of his brilliance already, where he can grab a game by the scruff of its neck. So do I have to do a package deal? Because I'd like to keep Andrew. I don't know about Rob Gilchrist, and honestly, I don't know if he's the right fit. It's still very early. But I don't know. I just think it's one of those situations where if there's half an opportunity that's better for them than Surrey, both of those guys are out. Loyalty doesn't come into it. So for that reason, I think I'm selling, because I know they would.
It's an audition, baby.
Well, I agree with both of you guys. We're going with the clean sweep here. I'm definitely selling it. And it's unfortunate because that game Saturday night against Bristol, the Gilchrist-Lawrence connection on that back alley-oop was nasty. And I didn't even get excited because I was like, you won't see this in 2 months. Unfortunately, Gilchrist, in my opinion, they're both using this as an opportunity to get in game shape. For Lawrence is to get healthy. And, although he would probably feel some type of loyalty towards Creon, and then, in the back of his mind, he might be thinking, I just need to be somewhere that's not a lot of pressure, get healthy for a year. But at the same time, when you've been hurt for 2 years, that this career is short, and you got to go get your coins. So if a big deal comes on the table, I could see him gone as well. So unfortunately, Surrey Scorchers fans, we're all selling. So enjoy the show while you can. But moving on to the final question of our buy or sell segment, starting with you first, Ant. I got an opportunity to watch Manchester Giants, and I tweeted that they were the best team in the North Group that I saw at Virtue Motors Arena. So are you buying or selling the fact that Manchester Giants are coming away with some silverware this season?
I'm buying it. And I rate them highly as well. I think there's been a good buzz, good anticipation before the BBL Cup competition started, and they're sitting pretty at the top of the most competitive group, which was the North this year. So I'm buying. I quite like what they're doing there. I like Coach Gardner as well, and I think they've got their British guys, and they've got good import players as well, and they're not rating any one that's better than the other. I think they're trying to mesh them both together, and just because he's an import, he's not automatically starting. So I quite like what they're doing. It must be very competitive in practice too. That's something we haven't seen behind the scenes. I think yes, we're seeing the results on the court, but those practice sessions must be awesome. Those must be legit, because they're, other than Dan Clark, who else has got a legitimate spot that's secured, and yeah, I'm buying.
Hey.
Love it. I think I'm buying too. I really do think I'm buying too. And like Ant said, I mean, you've got the Dan Clark effect, but there's been some real smart showing behind the scenes. Kudos to Jamie Edwards, kudos to Lloyd Gardner. They've gone their British pieces in first. Then they brought those American players. You're seeing American players come off the bench, and there's just all kinds of good things going on there for the Giants. I think in their first season, I think from a league perspective, you could expect there to be, some high highs and some low dips, just because it's their first season, if they can keep that group together. But in a cup run, yeah, I can see it. Why not?
Yeah, I hate to agree with you guys, but I guess it's just a Plymouth connection, but I'm buying as well. I mean, I was really impressed with this team, because you guys know how it is. Like when you put out a team, Newcastle sent out like 5 under 19 players out there. And, we've seen it a million times. You start playing out of character, doing things that you don't normally do. But from tip to the end of the buzzer, they remain professional. They ran their sets. They took the right shots. And I've always said to win silverware, you got to have a game changer on your team. And Martavius McKnight is a game changer. Man, he is so smooth. His pull-up J is really nice. And then Jamel Anderson has just brought that defensive tenacity that's just see through the entire group. And then you got Dan Clark. I mean, he's 6'10". I've said it 1,000 times. Bigs aren't going to know how to guard him. So, I would even go on a limb and say that if COVID or injuries affect London or Leicester, I wouldn't be surprised if Manchester won the league. Like, that's how good I'm feeling about them. I'm going out there on a limb, but it's because they got the depth. And, to win the league, you got to have, usually the British players is the separator, and they by far have the best Brits in the league. And so, I'm buying the fact that Manchester can come away. So Jamie Edwards, if you're listening, You send me a message, a private message every time I don't vote against you guys in the weekly picks. Now I need you to send me a bottle of red wine to my house for that take. But thanks for that, guys. That wraps up our buy or sell and hot topics segment.
Awesome. Okay, let's just move it over just quickly to Player of the Week nominations. You know the rules. Make sure on Monday you get onto that Twitter effect. Make sure you vote for your favorite player. We have 3 players for you right here. We have Jordan Johnson of Glasgow Rocks, dropped 21 points, 4 rebounds, 15 assists for a 31 index. We had him on the show the other day. He was a fantastic guest and a quality player. Mr. MVP, don't forget about me, Gino Crandell of the Leicester Riders, coming in with 10.7 rebounds and 12 assists on a 28 index, flirting with another triple-double as he does. And then lastly, Cheshire Phoenix, a familiar name in Riders, also name on right, dropped 33.6 rebounds and 4 assists for a 39 index. That's right, guys, a 39 index. 3 players for you to vote. Get jumping in now.
Make sure you guys get out there and vote. Last week, you guys broke the all-time record with 250 votes. So we want to see if we can get that number up to 500. Go out there and vote. And just because, don't be biased. You can vote for someone other than your teammate. Vote for the best performance. Take the eye test in consideration, the opponent, all the above. But I know you guys excited for us to move forward to our prediction segment. But before we do, you know I got to hit you guys with a little bit of Lasker Lookback. In this episode of the Lasker Lookback, I would like to welcome you all to the official 2021-2022 season. It's becoming clear over the past 2 years that the Cup is merely an extended preseason for most teams, and the real competition doesn't begin until after the group stage. Regardless the narrative, beginning Friday, October 29th, there are no more excuses. It's the real deal Holyfield, the Rumble in the Jungle, Joshua versus, you get my point. Making it even more official, the season debuts in front of the Sky cameras on display for the entire nation. So we don't have to worry about a venue broadband issue or interrupted streams, as Buzz 16 are as professional as it gets. With Nat Coombs at quarterback and myself and Kieran Achara as his backup dancers, all while Ant Rowe and Daniel Routledge deliver silky smooth tunes to your ears, tag teaming a vicious combination on the play-by-play comms. I know you're excited and can barely contain yourself, but most importantly, what we're excited to get back to, which we haven't had over the last 18 months, is you. Yes, the fans are back in the arenas with an extra incentive to get spotted on television. What a time to be alive. With 10 teams fighting to lift up the most prestigious trophy in the sport, who will stand tallest? Statistics say London, Newcastle, or Leicester since the 2011 and 12 season. They're the only teams to win the league. Is this the year we see a new franchise in that drought? Only time will tell. So sit back and enjoy the show. And that is your Lasker Lookback.
Man, great look back as always, Mr. Lasker. We have Tony Rowe, so we don't need to announce him as our guest, but let's move into our segment of league predictions. We're going to go 10 down to 1. Drew, I'm going to let you take the lead on this segment. Let's see where we put people and how much stick we're going to get.
All right, guys. I know we got all 10 fan bases tuning in and got their volumes turned up. Some will be proud, some will be disappointed, and we will say, hey, don't come at us on Twitter. Let your team prove it on the hardwood. But for our podcast listeners, we know that you guys don't have a form or graphic that you can see. So we'll try our best to translate it as best as possible. We'll start from the 10th team going all the way to the first. But we were all on the same page about the team finishing last. I don't think this is a surprise to anyone. We got the Plymouth City Royals. Did I say that correctly? Patriots I'm gonna get it soon. Plymouth City Patriots. That was a joke, guys. But anyhow, we're all on the same page. But I'm gonna let Jay and Ant give their explanations on why. So starting with you, Ant, why do you have the Plymouth City Patriots finishing last in the league this season?
It's been a tough start for them in the BBL Cup, and I don't see it getting any easier for them in the BBL campaign. That's not to say that they won't get better, but I think it's going to be a tough year. You know, for the constraints that we know that they can't have or can't hire contracts to import players, so everything is going to be British bred, but then by the time they were recruiting, it was quite late. So they've had a very difficult start anyway. However, I do see some bright sparks there. I think they are already so much better with Elvisi Dusha on the floor, regardless of whether he's shooting the ball well or not. You've seen the difference in this team when Elvisi Dusha is on the floor. They are better. And look, let's see. There's a rising star here. I called it last year. I said he was I said he was the most improved player of the whole season. And this year, he's a legit baller. Denzel Biaro. He's got that Dwayne Wade about him too. He's just relentless. You know, high energy, scores in a number of ways, and I think he'll carry them a lot this year offensively. But why I picked them at the bottom, they don't have as much talent as everyone else, quite plainly. And they need to find some sort of identity defensively. I've been really disappointed with their defensive effort and execution so far. However, they've showed improvement. They showed improvement again tonight against the Leicester Riders, and they had a very ferocious zone defense against the Bristol Flyers the game before. So defense is something you can implement and you can improve, but they need to be one of the best defensive teams in the league in order to compete. And I don't know if they will be. But for that reason, they're going to be bottom of the pile this year, just because it's a tough league.
You're so nice, mate. You're so nice. You're so nice. I think for me, now I'm not going to go in on them, you know, because like I said, everybody's just trying to do their best, you know, like, and that's one thing people have got to understand is this is a show and we're here to put a show on and we're going to talk some things, but also we don't know what's going on behind the scenes. You know, I think that in my honest opinion, I think it's just been a mistake. I think it's a mistake by the league. I think it's been a mistake by the people taking it on down in the team. You've lost your identity and losing your name, which is just huge. You know, that's a huge blow for anyone. You've just lost the best BBL mascot in the you know, in the country. The most recognizable piece of your franchise is gone, and you know, financially, it looks like it's not quite there, you know, like, so financially, if you're looking at the type of players they brought in players to develop. And as Anthony says, they are going to get better because, you know, most of them are young, hungry, or they're players that just haven't been given a chance. And now they're going to be thrown a chance. But I think it's really tough on, you know, just imagine yourself mentally if you're Coach James, you know, almost having this perfect scenario, this perfect crescendo to your career where, you know, it looks like you're heading towards a Vince moment, you know, again, like whatever people think about what's going on with the Lions and Vince, like he deserves that opportunity. He's taken that franchise to that level. And then having to revert that to going back to almost like a college mentality where you're trying to build a team and make a team better. So I just think all of those things culminate into just a really, really tough season for those guys. And, you know, I just think, like, for me, just takes a little bit off the season for me, if I'm honest, you know, and that might be a little bit harsh or maybe a little bit bitter to the fact that, you know, I'm a Raider and that's how I'll always be. But yeah, I just think under the restraints and then, you know, the league not necessarily looking at how much finance is going to go in, you can do it with an all British team like Everton have done it, you know, so it's not, you can't make excuses for, you know, not being able to have visas and being able to get Americans and stuff like that. You can do it, but this is a developing side. I'll finish. Ant is right. Elvisi Dusha last year was phenomenal, and I love his growth in his career, and him coming in being a leader will help them. Yep, Denzel Ubiario is stepping right up. He does have a bit of Dwayne Wade about him, but you know, I still think the jump shot's missing, which is going to hurt him. So when teams take that away, but yeah, I think they're gonna finish bottom. You know, maybe not a lot of positives coming out of me in that situation, but they will improve. They have a fantastic coach, and I know the people behind the scenes are trying their butt off. So, no offense to them.
Drew, just before you bring this one home for us, just to, I guess, start the controversy here in our debate, I would disagree with Jay in that sense. Me being from Plymouth, I'm very grateful that there's still a professional team coming from Plymouth, and I get what Jay is saying, but the worry I had was Plymouth Raiders decide not to participate this year. We hear news later of the Plymouth Raiders Limited going to liquidation. Companies don't come back from that a lot of times, and that's it. Plymouth Raiders is done. Like, there's no more pro teams in the Southwest or by Bristol Flyers, which is 120 miles away. Now, where the Plymouth City Patriots come in, yes, they could go 0-30 this year, right? However, where there's existence, there's hope. And for me personally, being from Plymouth, there's a pro team still in my hometown, and for that, I do respect it. I don't really want to get into all the stuff going behind the scenes because I feel like it's very negative. It's not very nice, and I think where Jay is probably still a lot closer to that than I am, and he has strong opinions on that. But there's still a team there, guys, and for that reason, it's going to be a team that's going to be able to compete as well. They may lose a lot, but I think they'll compete. So for that reason, I would say I disagree with Jay Merritt in that sense, and I'm glad there's a pro team coming out of Plymouth.
But let me add one thing. Like, my concern about that whole situation is all around pavilions. Yeah. So if you put all that effort, and they're really trying, like I said, behind the scenes, like I bet you they're busting their butt. I understand. I'm trying to do it here. Like, it's ridiculous. It's so hard, and I don't want to be Mr. Negative, but have they done enough homework on where they're going to be? Because if that venue's not there, where do they go? And then you've busted your butt, and you've had all these volunteers, and you've had everyone believing that you're bringing it back, and then it doesn't just quite happen. Maybe they've got a plan in their back pocket, and if they do, I'll bow down to it. But you are right. Raiders are dead. As I said, and I'm just a bitter ex that finds it hard to move on,
Yeah, I mean, both of you guys make some great points, and there's really nothing for me to add on there. Jay and I have sat on different sides as far as should they have continued on or taken out a year, and we don't need to get into that. My only concern was that, I've seen a lot of fans on the socials say, we're just happy to have a team, but that sounds great. If you keep getting blitzed by 50 or 60, how long does that last? So the biggest thing for Plymouth is they have to show some type of improvement, because if they don't, fans are fickle. We know how it works. Like, you could say that, but if you're losing by 50 every night, sooner or later, they're just going to find something else to do on a Sunday afternoon. So it was very encouraging seeing them, have a competitive game against Leicester. So my concern is with you as well, Jay, is that I'm looking around the landscape of Plymouth and I'm like, where are you going to play? So hopefully they got that figured out. But, we all three are, we bleed green, and we want to see the Plymouth organization be successful and be sustainable. So we'll see what happens. But as far as predictions, we're all on the same page. We're picking them last. No hard feelings. It's just business here, guys. But we move on to the 9th place runner-up to last. And again, we all sit on the same playground with this team here. And I'll start off. And this is with the Surrey Scorchers. And for me, I'm probably the biggest advocate for Surrey, and a couple of reasons why. Because, I play with Macklemore, I play with Teo, real close to those guys, and Creon is my guy. He's one of the nicest, coolest coaches I've ever played for. But for me, it's you got to prove it to me now. Even if I like the fact that they brought in new blood. They basically got Macklemore, Teo, and Dean Wangless returning, and everyone else is pretty much fresh, which is saying, hey, we got to clear this closet out. We got to bring something new, a new identity mindset, which Creon has done. But, it's been the same story with these guys for the last 6 or 7 years at least. And for me, I'm at the point now where it's like, how they say about some guys in the NBA, like James Harden, for example. Like, I don't care what you do in the regular season now. You got to prove it in the playoffs. This is how I am about Surrey. I don't care about what it looks like on paper with Andrew Lawrence and Gilchrist. You got to show it to me and prove it to me. And saying that, although they have 2 studs in those guys, we've already talked about that in the Hot Topics segment. None of us think they're going to stick around for the whole year. So, I'm just looking at, if they do start well, then what happens when those guys leave? What's the backup plan? Because remember, they're British. You're not going to substitute anybody better for them. Whereas if they were Americans, you could probably bring a replacement in that's at the similar level, but you're not bringing another Andrew Lawrence in when he returns, neither a Rob Gilchrist at this point of the season. So, you know, two reasons why I picked them to finish this far is because I'm looking at their stats right now, according to Brit Hoops, and right now they're second and last to field goal percentage in the league at 41%. You can guess who's first. That's Plymouth City. And then also what's really concerning for me is the turnovers. They're averaging 18 turnovers a game. And just to put that in perspective for you, the Sheffield Sharks are only averaging 9. So that's 9 less opportunities that they're getting to shoot. And when they shoot, they're only scoring 41% of the time. So, you know, in basketball, that's a disaster for recipe. That's a recipe for disaster. If you're not shooting the ball well and you're giving it away, when we know the BBL is a transition league and teams thrive off of running. So we know 60% of the times teams are going to score off those turnovers. So, you know, for me at this point, and I want to see them turn this thing around and be successful and fight for something, but I just don't see it until they prove it. Ant?
Yeah, really. That's a really good synopsis, Drew. To be fair, I'm in agreement with all of it. And you hit the nail on the head when you said one thing there. You said it's the same thing year after year with them. I think they're stuck in time. You know, you look at the BBL 6-7 years ago. They probably scrape into the playoffs, right? And they make the playoffs, but they haven't seemed to progress. The rest of the league, I feel like, has progressed via the quality of players, recruitment of players, the way that they play. But Surrey Scorchers seem to just stay the same, and they're just getting left behind. And for that reason, I think they'll just miss out here. It's they're like the team as well, the dark cloud over them. That's how I perceive Surrey Scorchers. Whether it's to their fault or whether it's to their fault or not to their fault, they've got that a negative outcome in them. You know, it's gonna that rain's gonna rain on them, right? Because that cloud's following them around. And you know, I look at some of the players that they've got. Stanley Davis, Shaquan Jameson, you think, yeah, those guys could hoop. But it's just something about that whole, I don't know, that whole unit. What I will say is that guy, Tail Ogundenbe, goodness me, like a fine wine, he is getting better and better every year. It's insane. And the way he's scoring the ball as well, it seems so much more effortless for him now. I remember like 10 years ago, that boy would work so hard just to get, I don't know, to flirt with 8 points or whatever.
He couldn't even dribble.
Yeah, he was so athletic, and you know, he was going right. And you know, if he shot a 3, you know, he was either going in or was missing by a mile. You know, he was one of those guys. He was almost good. Don't get me wrong, but I just feel like he is so finished now, so polished, and he's so good to watch. I love calling his games. So I think for him as well, responsibility comes with leadership as well. I think, yes, he's the club captain, but I think it's really hard sometimes to lead a group of guys, and he's got one hell of a job this year, because that's what Surrey Scorchers need. They need more continuity and connectedness together as a unit. That's what they do not have, and that's why they're not going to make the playoffs for me, in my eyes.
Yeah, I agree with you about Teo, and that's one area. I mean, I've always said it. He's the most improved player I've ever seen in my 16 years in this league. And credit to him, when I played with him in 11, he would wake up every morning watching NBA on his iPad. So he's a student of the game. So it's not by coincidence. And I think the next step for him is leadership. Definitely taking on that leadership role, to getting those guys to working and following his lead. But Jay, you got anything you want to touch on there before we move on?
No, look, just love the tail point. But look, fellas, if we could keep our bodies in that trim at this age with our knowledge, we would probably be able to put that package together. So he's just done a phenomenal job in looking after himself, giving himself time, giving himself longevity. But like Ant said, he has got a tough job on his hands, especially if it looks like it's shaky for those two players staying, which we know are Andrew Lawrence and Rob Gilchrist.
And so we all are on the same page about the Surrey Scorchers, and we all have them finishing 9th, right outside the playoff bubble. And as we move on to 8th, and for the BBL, the top 8 teams qualify for the playoffs. So with 10 teams in the league, that's not asking a lot. So I don't want anyone cheering saying, yay, we made the playoffs. Well, you better when there's 10 teams. And so this is where we start to kind of tell off a little bit. So, Jay, you and I are on the same page about the 8 team, as we both have Bristol. So we'll start with you. Why do you have Bristol finishing eighth?
Yeah, I think like you touched on, like it's the only thing about the league this year. Like obviously, listen, I know the Wolves dropping out was a big blow for everybody and a big loss, and then the level of Plymouth where they were, that was a big loss because we just finished on such a crescendo and a high last year. It was amazing, and I think if there's one little knock on the league this year, it just is like perhaps somebody's going to get a playoff spot that maybe didn't deserve it in some respects. But I got Bristol playing eighth just because I think that we've had Coach Andreas on here. It was brilliant listening to him, that he just felt like needed a fresh start, needed to revamp everything. But I just see everything that I've seen before, so that they've always had an eye for some really talented Americans. So these Americans coming in, they're great players, but we've seen great players coming in before. Have they just lost a little bit in terms of that British core that they had? I think that they have, and I think that's probably going to be to the detriment of their performances. So yes, the Americans look really, really exciting. But I just think they're still going to have those offensive woes, like they had a really close game against Plymouth, but I don't care like what level you're at. A derby's a derby, right? And Plymouth really showed out, which was fantastic. But yeah, I just see a lot of the same, so like, and we can be fooled sometimes, I think, by just how good Joel is. In terms of what they're putting out, they're literally top of the league, or joint top of the league. Sorry, Peter, joint top of the league for what they're kind of putting out there in terms of content and stuff like that. And I think that can sucker us in sometimes. The freaking Utah Jazz version jerseys look amazing, but yeah, I just see a little bit more of the same, and I think that's going to cost them a few positions.
Yeah, that's a great point, and I think that's why last year I actually picked them to finish fifth, and my reasons were because I saw the arena on the horizon, and I think I kind of was sold by the comms. Like it looks so great that you buy into it, that you think that the actual team is that great, but we know that has nothing, no reflection on what happens on the court. The opponents don't get afraid because they have a nice social media page. So this year I've kind of fell back down to earth with Bristol, although, like you said, we had Coach Andreas on here. And I will give credit to him that, I addressed him about the predictable offense, and they have kind of changed it up a little bit. They're playing a lot faster. And like you mentioned, Jay, they have talented Americans this year, which they usually do. But, I'm not sure. I know last year, maybe the home court advantage was the reason why they didn't win many of those games, and they get that back. But I'm just not quite sold on them. And Saturday night was a prime example of a game that you got to put to bed. You got the Surrey Scorchers coming in, and you're up in the fourth quarter, and you let them go on a run and come and beat you at home. And so, that's why that's worrying for me. And another, as far as statistically, a reason that I will say that they will be in a lot of games is Del Pesh. I mean, they lead the league in offensive rebounding at 14 offensive rebounds a game, which is phenomenal. So I think from just that standpoint, that's a skill that travels well. That travels anywhere, being able to get second chance opportunities. And so that'll help them. But, I just don't see it. And hopefully they prove me wrong, because I like Coach Andreas a lot, and I'm cheering for him. He was my coach at the Commonwealth Games, but I just think that the top half is some tough teams. You've seen the North Division; all those teams are good, and Newcastle isn't going to be a 1-7 team. So I don't really see them leapfrogging any of those teams in the North. So that's my reasoning for putting them there. But Ant, you kind of went in a different direction, and you have Cheshire at eighth.
Yeah, and this is the one pick I was not as sure about, in all honesty, because I really like Cheshire. I said it at the beginning of the year, and this was the one I was really I wrote it down, and I took it off. I wrote it down, I took it off. I really had a problem with this one, and I think Namon Wright is going to be a legitimate BBL All-Star this year. I think he's always been that good. I got to see him week in, week out at Riders. He just didn't have as many. shooting options as riders. You know, he was in a system there with other really good players, and he just didn't get to. His leash was a little bit tighter there. But he was very efficient. If you look at his statistics, he averaged 14, 15 points a game, but he did it very, very efficiently. Very efficiently. And he's showing now he's at 30+ point games for the Cheshire Phoenix. You know, when you give him a little bit of a longer leash. So I think for him, he's going to be in the. I think you're going to be talking about him a lot in Player of the Week. And I really like the British guys. I like what they've done. I like who they've recruited. However, I still like them, but I think they're very thin. They're very lean. When you look at a Mike Archirobia out of the equation, they are not as good. That's just one player, one good player, one very good player. Don't get me wrong, but one player's out of the equation. I looked at them the next game. I thought, oh, you're not as scary anymore. You're not as impactful as you were 6 days ago. So they're just lean, and they're one injury away from being very average. And when you look at that roster as well, incredibly exciting, bursting with potential and excitement. But where's the winners? All I can see is one BBO silverware. There's Ben, Coach Thomas, right? And Dangakodo, did he win at Lions? Yeah, last year. He won at Lions,
they won
right?
the trophy, yeah.
Yeah. So other than that, no one else has won anything in the BBL. And fellas, we've all been there. We know you need to have the horses that have won before, because that freaking helps when the game's on the line, and they just don't have enough of those guys. With the exciting recruitment, though, I think Josh McSwiggan was a very, very shrewd pickup, very clever, very, very clever. I think he's a up and coming guy. I've seen behind the scenes of his raw talent and ability. If he stays healthy, again, another guy who's quite young, who's already had injury bugs bite him a couple of times. If he stays healthy, he's good. He's really, really good, and he could be a prominent force in the BBO as well. So I think they've done a lot of. I've got more positives than negatives for them, and here I am, put them at 8. So this is why I'm really struggling. I just think they are one injury away from being very average, and that's my reasonings for putting them just scraping in the playoff spot there.
And you mentioned injuries, and I got a chance to watch them up close and personal when they didn't have Teddy O, and Newcastle blew them out by 20, and they look like a completely different team. So, like you mentioned, very thin, very weak, and they just better hope that Teddy O is healthy this season. So, at 8th, Jay and I are on the same page with Bristol. Ant is with Cheshire. As we move to who finishes 7th, and Jay, I'll start with you because you actually have Cheshire finishing 7th. So just to piggyback off Ant.
Yeah, so I've got to say here that I think the struggle is, and this is more for Cheshire fans to listen to my reasoning, is that I think that 4 down to 7 really could be. I really truly believe all of us are guessing at that point. Like that's how I feel about these teams. Like there's strengths and weaknesses for every reason why one of them could finish 7th, or one of them could have a great run and finish 4th. You know, I've said before, like Giants, for example, I think that they will have the highs of the highs, but there's still some lows of the lows to go through. But yeah, I've got them at 7th, and it'll just be interested to see whether, you know, whether or not they make some changes, you know, that they synonymously do in a season, that they make some changes that they might see as an upgrade if need be. But like I said, I think that they've been really impressive by how they've gone about their business. They've done it differently this year. Lots of British talent in first. Agree with Ant on name on right. Like he's just, you know, he is a star. And I think Coach Thomas synonymously brings the best out of a player in that position. But surprised I haven't seen like one of his 7-foot specials yet. So like I'm not sold yet that he's done. He's usually keeps one of them in the back pocket, and they come in and change the game. But yeah, I mean it's tough to put them there. Like Ant said, there's a lot of things that I like about them. Teddy O's being a lot more aggressive. Good British pieces. Archirobia, I'm a massive fan of Archirobia. Like I'm way, you know, high on him, higher than most people gave him credit for down in Plymouth as well. You know, because when you look at when they lost the big fella and he had to step in, like they didn't miss a beat, and arguably they got better. So Cheshire at 7, but reluctantly.
And so, Ann, I'm gonna move to you because you have a team that's pretty aggressively attack Jay and I on social media because they feel like we're not giving them enough respect. And so you got the Glasgow Rocks at 7.
Yeah, I think they're good. I don't know. I think time will tell. I'm a big fan of Gareth Murray. I think he's excellent. I think he's shown us already that he's his coaching abilities there. His basketball IQ's always been high anyway. But I think the leader of men, question mark maybe that was probably over his name. I think he won some games he shouldn't have won last year. And I think he's carried on to this year, and he's still a really good player, really good player in terms of not just shooting the basketball. You look at the things he does; he's very good. And they've got Ali Frazier. I have to give a lot of credit to Ali Frazier because that's a guy that's came down to Leicester last year, was given a reduced role, clearly struggled with confidence on a week in, week out basis, and it was a non-factor many weeks. You know, you'd sometimes look and you think that guy was a legit BBL all-star, and he's struggling to get minutes and put the ball in the hole. This year he's been the Alistair Frazier we know. He's been dominant. I think he's happy. You can tell he's happy to be back playing in Glasgow, and that's what Glasgow Rocks have. That's a very dangerous thing. They have a group of Scottish players that are proud, and the pride is priceless. In my opinion, it's priceless, and they've got that, in Bunyan, in Murray, and a few of the other guys there. So I think that's what they'll have in their pocket. I just think that, I don't know, I looked at JC Hillsman and Jordan Harris, their import players. Maybe it's a bit too early. And Elijah Minnie, he looked good as well. And so there's little things behind the scenes that's going on that they're not disclosing to us because they clearly don't want to know. And I think there's little fractures inside the bubble there. Really frustrated about their press release as well. We'll release a player tomorrow. I'm there on Twitter waiting for it to be released, and then they're telling me I need to buy a ticket. Well, I'm down in the Midlands. I cannot go 5 hours up there to find out who they're going to be signing. So I was I thought that was a bit frustrating. I think if you want to be all saying all bell whistles social media, tell us the good, the bad, and the ugly. They really went out big time and went overboard, I think, with the signing. And I remember seeing it. I was thinking in my head, who's Canadian that we'll all know? Because the way they portrayed it is like, we know this guy. Like, Charles Smith's coming out of retirement, or something big's happened here. And then they released it the next day. I'm like, Dan, do we know this guy? And Dan's like, no. So if Dan Routledge doesn't know, I don't know. So I was a bit frustrated with that. Anyway, their social media, they're backward, and they don't have commentators as well, which is really frustrating me. So I think I'm biasly maybe giving them a hard time here because of all the other stuff. I'm not really a big fan of what they've done this year. But look, I'm a huge fan of Gareth Murray. I just think maybe they just don't have enough to squeeze themselves up in the top brackets there. Maybe they're not as deep. Their talent's not as deep. And for that reason, I would say they're around the seventh place mark there.
And it's interesting that you brought up the point about being transparent, and that's one thing that I've personally asked for years. Like, just like the NBA, if somebody's hurt, tell us who's hurt, tell us how long they're going to be out. And I want to give a special shout out to the Cheshire Phoenix, because when Ocherobio went out, there was a tweet, there was a timeline, and I was like, okay, like, that should be the standard around the league. Why are we always hiding these injuries? Like, let us know, let the fans know what it is and how long it's going to be, and then we can move on. But I hate it that we're always in the dark with some of these teams. So I just wanted to give those guys a shout out. But I'm rounding out team number 7 with the Sheffield Sharks. Now, I know Sharks fans are going to probably be surprised here because I went on the Twitter and I was really ranting and raving after I saw them come to the Eagles Arena, and I was ranting and raving about Kipper Nichols and the point guard. But that was the second game of the season, and now that I've gotten an opportunity to watch them more, I'm pretty much seeing the same old Sheffield Sharks. I mean, struggling to score. If you look at their numbers, I mentioned this earlier, they're only averaging 9 turnovers a game, which is phenomenal. So that means you're getting shot opportunities every time. But then you look at the points per game, they're 8th in the league in points per game. So I don't really see how that matches up when you are also top half of the league in steals. So you're getting turnovers, you're not turning the ball over, but yet you still can't score. And I think a lot of that has to do with the 3-point. And we know how the game has evolved to the 3-pointer. You got to be able to shoot it. and you see the Leicester Riders up there at 43%, and they're shooting 28%. So, Aaron Anderson is a great point guard for them, and he takes care of the ball, 7.6 assists every turnover. But we know what kind of league this is. You look at Jordan Johnson, he can put the ball in the hole at the point guard position in the BBL. And we talked about this with Teddy O last year. You got to score. This isn't a league for a traditional point guard. So I'm just worried about where they're going to get points. And we see Kipper. I just don't think that, although I really compliment him on his focusedness and the way that he has that look now, but I don't know if he's the type of player that could be a lead guard on a winning team. He's more of a role player skill set. So, and then the biggest shock of all for me is the Cox signing. I mean, he was backing up Mike Tuck, and Mike Tuck is in his 34th year, and he's in his 20s, and he can't beat Mike Tuck out. And they bring him back, which was really surprising for me. So, maybe he's doing something great in the community, which we know a lot of BBL teams, that means a lot. But at the end of the day, like, you got to produce on the court. And he had a big game against Newcastle, but that was against a Newcastle team that had 5 players. So I want to see him do that against some of the big boys. And just for all those reasons that I mentioned, I don't see them, even though I actually think their team is better, I don't see them better enough to like make a run at some silverware. So I'll leave it at that. So we wrap up at 7. Jay with Cheshire, Ant sitting with the Rocks, and I sit with Sheffield Sharks. As we move on to the 6th team in the league, and Ant, I'm going to start with you because you have a team that Jay and I have already talked about, and you are pretty optimistic about the Bristol Flyers at 6.
I am, Drew, and maybe it's part to do with Joel and the superb marketing techniques that they've got, mesmerising my opinion here. But I've watched the Bristol Flyers, obviously over the years, and I haven't been very high on them. I think they're very safe. I think they're a safe bet, but not next level. This year, I've seen signs that makes me change that. I think it's a big season for Bristol Flyers as well. They have to do something. Year after year, you keep going these years and years and years of being a good team, which is great. That's fine, but there has to be that time where, what's the saying? Always the bridesmaid, never the bride. That's Bristol Flyers. They're good and they've made finals and they will beat someone good once in a blue moon, but they'll never sort of consistently do it or get that trophy back down to the southwest. And they need a big season, and for that reason, I think Kapoulis is recruited. I like the Americans this year. I think they've got something different. Trajan Jacob, very impressed with him. Both ends of the floor. And I'm not just saying offensive. This guy can score 20 a game. Both ends of the floor. I think their Americans can be very, very good. And I like that 1-2-3 that they've got. Athletic guards that will play defense as well, the other end of the floor. So I'm pretty excited about that. The big guy, Zach Simmons. He's safe. He hasn't impressed me that much so far. He's good and he's safe around the rim. They need him to be more dominant. So if that comes in time, then I think that would just increase their league position. But when we're talking about big men, Malcolm Delpeche is not the same Malcolm Delpeche we remember 2-3 seasons ago. This guy he's already on my list for most improved player. We've played 7-8 BBL Cup games. He's different. Whether he's been working out with his brother in the off season, I do not know what's happened, but he is a different man. Like, he looks good, and just his knack around the rim as well, scoring the basketball, his movement. He looks. I had to double take. I'm like, are you sure that's not the same guy that was there last year? Because he's so much better, and I think he makes them better. One player in particular that I need more from. If I'm a Bristol Flyers fan, I need more from Josh Rogers. Josh Rogers is the team captain. He's from Bristol. I've been that guy. I've been the hometown kid that's had the privilege of being the team captain. You've got to do more. I think if Josh Rogers does more, that team is so much more dangerous. We've seen him have games already this year where he's done more. They've won the basketball game. Where I see a big difference from previous Bristol Flyers team, I was sitting there calling the game when they beat the Leicester Riders. Guys, they weren't in the game. For 35 of the 40 minutes, Leicester Riders controlled the whole game. Last year, Leicester Riders win that by 20. They go on. They do that. We're on to the next game. They just hung around. They had a lot more grit. That is not a word I usually associate with the Bristol Flyers, grit. That's what they did. They had really good possessions on the defensive end. It got to the 35th minute mark. You saw a switch. Trajan Jacobs steps up, big shots, big plays on the defensive end. And that was a big turning point in my mind. Yes, I'm just basing it on one game, 5 minutes of one game, but they had a formula there, and their mentality was so much different that I haven't seen with a Bristol Flyers team before. And I think they'll get teams like that a lot this year. So I'm pretty high on Bristol Flyers this year. I think they'll be, if they don't come sixth, I think they might come higher. I think they'll be good this year.
Wow. And you bring up the Del Pesh point, and he is much improved, and he's a big reason why they're leading the league in offensive rebounding. But Jay, you got Sheffield Sharks finishing one spot higher than me. What's the reasoning?
Yeah, I think it's where they always finish, right? It's in around that 5th or 6th spot. Like they're unbelievably consistent about being in those positions. So again, like I've told you, 4 through 7 is ropey for me. Yeah, I'm not sure he's necessarily got the balance right, and I feel like they've gone right back into last season mode. Which again, there were some really great moments, like you said. Anderson is a really good player. They've obviously brought Cook back for more continuity, but then they had Del Pesh and they had Mike Tuck, and they've gone for Kipper Nichols. I still think they're missing the player that I talked about last year, which was a much more versatile 4 that could really stretch the floor and could really go scoring. And I think they've done the same thing again this year. But there's some really good pieces there. I mean, let's not forget Jordan Rottino. Like, the impact that he had last season was unbelievable. Maybe a bit slower out of the gates this year, but I think he'll come good and get going. And as a team unit, they do have depth, and that's probably my one concern with Bristol as Ant brought it up, is that Rogers is bumped up 1. I think Rafael Thomas Edwards, I think he's hit a ceiling of where he is and what he's going to be as a player. And that's probably that little missing ingredient. And I think Sharks might be suckered by the same thing, by just not having that piece. And I know you clowned me early on in the season about Kipper and stuff like that, but I don't think that's the player that's going to rise him up from a 6th spot, and I hold to it from last season going into this season.
Yeah, and I'll round out with the Glasgow Rocks, and which is a huge accomplishment for these guys, because they were in a similar situation that Plymouth will be in this year. And I guess that's kind of motivation that Plymouth can take, that this is the reason why you continue to move on, even though it's going to be a tough time, because you see how good the Rocks look a year fast forward from finishing the bottom of the league. But I think it's one guy and one guy only that changes his team, and it's Jordan Johnson. I mean, this guy, and we had him on the show recently, he has a great personality, and he's just a stud, man. Like, he has the body. He can finish. He could do it all. I mean, he leads the team in minutes played, defensive rebounding, which is amazing for someone who's 5'10", steals, and also assists. He just does a great job at setting these guys up so nicely that it's no surprise that they are 3rd in the league at points scored and field goal percentage, because they're getting great looks. And I think he's even helping Johnny Bunyan. I mean, even though Bunyan has a lesser role, I think this is the greatest I've ever seen him play. I mean, he hit 4 threes against Eagles last weekend, and he just looks really comfortable. And I think that Jordan is giving him some confidence. So, I'm really excited. I mean, anything that the Rocks do this year should be applauded. So, finishing 6th it says a lot about their coach there, Gareth Murray. And then let's not forget about the great assistant that he brought on as well from Reading. And so he has a great staff behind him. But, I mean, I think I'm with Ant. If I would have known that they didn't have commentator on, I think I would have picked them last. I mean, I watched them play against the Eagles last week. It took me 2 quarters to figure out why this game was so weird. And I was like, because they don't have commentators. That's why. Man, that was awkward. So, a team that's going to be pretty successful this year, it sucks for the fans who can't make it to games. Maybe that's their ploy to get them to to the arena. But come on, guys, we got to put a bucket around the arena. Let's add us some chump change. You got Kieran Achar there. I know his price has gone up now that he's with Sky Sports, but come on, guys, let's get some comps. Let's get some comps there. But yeah, that wraps up our 6 picks. You know, Jay going Sheffield Sharks, Ant with the Bristol Flyers, and I'm with the Glasgow Rocks. As we begin to hit the top half, we go to 5th. And Jay, I'm going to come right to you because you got Rocks finishing 5th.
Yeah, I mean, like I said it last year, like I'm super high on Gareth Murray. I think he's got a amazing basketball IQ. You know, I think if anyone's going to manage that dual role, I think he's shown that he's willing to sacrifice the playing a little bit to be more of a coach, you know. So like, I think that he's starting to transition there. He did everything that I asked. He just missing one piece, was that he started to build that Scottish roster out. So bringing Fraser back was a really big piece. I think would have liked to have seen Mike Vigor in there as well. I reckon you could have maybe persuaded him to get up there as well with his Scottish passport. But yeah, just really impressed with him. Like you said, Jordan Johnson, he's probably my candidate to be getting on the commentary. He's doing everything else. So, you know, I think he could probably jump in and fit one more statistic in there as he's going along. So I think he's legit. Yeah, of course, like there's probably a touch of Gareth having to go through this phase that you've got to go through with teams. You know, there's this whole storming, norming, performing type situation. So whatever happened with Minnie has happened. I agree with you, Ant, but I didn't get suckered in because they did it last year when they did the whole 2 Americans coming in and they made it seem like you knew who they were. And then you were like, who are these guys? No offense to them, but there wasn't anything to get excited about in terms of knowing them. So yeah, I mean, I'm really buying what they're selling right now. And I think what they've done is that they've stayed very lean last year. They knew that they were going to have a really tough season in order to come in this season and probably bulk up a little bit, ready to move forward. So I think they've got the structure in underneath, looks good. The coaching staff, amazing. So I'm going to put them as high as 5th.
Nice. Ant, you got Sheffield Sharks.
Yeah, I do, and it just one sentence what Jay said. Essentially, they always do it, so why not do it this year? It's a simple case of that, and a lot of it comes to coaching as well. We'll talk a lot about players, etc. But I think now we're talking about the top 5, top 4. You know, this is where I think you see the difference now in caliber. But Atiba Lyons has did it. It's not an accident that he ends up being in the top 4, top 5 every year. There's not an accident that he win a BBL Cup or a trophy or whatever, every couple of years. So for that reason, he's obviously seen something as well that we don't know. I was very surprised too. I remember texting Dan Routledge one day when I saw Bennett Cook had been signed again, because I thought he was good. But I thought that mentally, I think sometimes he clocks out, and you see weaknesses in him when things aren't going his way. But again, he's 6'10", he's skilled, and he's very good, and there's just not a lot of those guys walking around. So I get it. But Atiba Lyons obviously saw something in him. But where they've got, I think the strength now is they've got Del Pesh there as well, and this is the Del Pesh that was dominant in the BBL last year. This is the Del Pesh that was really good down in Bristol last year, and I think they're just bigger and stronger and a lot more dangerous now. And down low now. I like their Americans. Really, really impressed with Aaron Anderson so far. Aaron Anderson, to me, he seems like I think he was on your show. He just seemed like a really good guy and does whatever is necessary for that team to win the ball game. And that's a very, very powerful thing to have. I think when you get a guy who's just joined you, that's willing to buy into that. And he's already showed games where he's get his 20 points or whatever, but he's there where he can get 10 plus assists and be a facilitator. So he's not so concerned about his own personal agenda. It's all about winning for him, and I think that makes him really special for that team. And we look back last year, if you look at that guy, Jeremy Hensley, for good man, he was really good. His statistics were really good. He was really good. And it's like dating. You put a good person together with another good person. Sometimes it just doesn't work. That's what happened last year with the Sheffield Sharks and Jeremy Hensley. It was a really good player on a good team, but for whatever reason, the compatibility, there wasn't enough swiping right or left or whatever you do. It just didn't work. And this year, I think it would work better already with Aaron Anderson. And they've got a bunch of guys that are returning. There's a good chunk too. Routinho's back as well. Kipper Nichols. I think you're right, Drew. Kipper Nichols, it's the jury's out on him, and just that, he's a really safe 10 points, 11 points a game guy. Like, you can always sort of, like, he's always there, but you need him to sometimes be that 20, 25 points, make big shots in the fourth quarter type of guy. That's what we'll that's what we're looking to see from him this year. And I'm sure Atiba is the same. That's, you wouldn't bring him back otherwise. So I just think they're always going to be a team that's going to be able to get there because they're well coached enough and they've got all of the pieces that they need. Yeah, so I think 5 is somewhere where they're gonna be. But no, they're Sheffield Sharks. They're very Sheffield Sharks.
Yeah, very, very true. And guys, Ant Rowe said it. They got rid of Jeremy Hensley because he left the toilet seat open up. So, dating advice here on the BBL show. So,
Don't
but
forget
as
your
I
keys. Don't forget your keys either, guys.
But yeah, I got Cheshire finishing here at 5th, and I know Rachel is going to be very excited to hear that. But I've been excited about Cheshire since the offseason. I mean, ever since Ben Thomas reached out to Jay and I about announcing their signing here live on the BBL show, just goes to show how forward thinking he is as a coach and how forward thinking he is with that roster. And I think it started with Teddy O. And what I'm so happy to see is Teddy O. Thank you. You've adjusted to the BBL and you know what this league is about, because he's no longer playing that European style. There, he's being very aggressive. He's picking his spots. He's being very assertive there at the point guard position. So, that there is going to lead them to success. You got a A1 Greece level player in the BBL, and that's aggressive. That's going to get you places. I like the roster. Name on right is the game changer you need. I mean, he had a big night here against Newcastle Eagles, but I'm with you, Ant. Why I have reservations because, one injury away, losing Ochorobo is going to be tough. But if they lose Teddy O, which he was out for an extended time last year with the Bristol Flyers, so he hasn't quite proven that he can stay healthy over the course of the season, and so I'm concerned there. But everything that they've done this year to hiring Danny Byrne as their assistant coach, you got a BBL level coach as an assistant. Which paid dividends when Coach Thomas was out recently for whatever reason, and he took over the helm. So a lot to be proud about there, Cheshire. So, I got them finishing at 5th. But we move on now to the exciting part, which every team strives for. If it's not a league title, it's a top 4 finish. And so, we're all around the same page here, and Jay and I are with the Manchester Giants. But, Ant, you got my Newcastle Eagles finishing at 4th. Explain away.
Yeah, I wrestled with this one, and what I didn't want to do is I didn't want to put Newcastle Eagles, 1, 2, or 3 because of the Newcastle Eagles previously. I don't want to get swayed by what's historically and what I've experienced as a player and as a spectator and a pundit. So I just obviously I've seen so many frailties with them so far this year. I would never have predicted they would finish bottom, even with struggles or adversity. I'd never predict what's happened, and it's happened. The concern as well, why, and this is the thing, I'm saying they're going to be top 4 in a really good league, and that's a down season for the Newcastle Eagles. I'm sitting here like justifying my disappointing ranking of them, but I don't think they've quite got the roster right this year. They've already had to make a change in Vincent, so I guess we'll see what that means and what player comes in. But Shelton doesn't look particularly scary to me. He's not someone that I would fear. Ramon Fletcher, I think, was a really valid point you made previously, Drew, when you said he was someone that has not really been injured. He is a legitimate MVP. He is. but he hasn't had the tests that many other players have had with injuries, etc. Now he's got injuries. He's older now. Like, does that stay with him a little bit more? Does that affect his ability to do what he does on a weekly basis? Darius Defoe, played against him in mine in his prime. He's a beast. He still is a beast, but he's another year older. I've already seen him carry his team this year because his team needed him. Can he keep doing that? Time and time again in this season. I don't know. Should he be required to do that? But he's had to. He's had to do it this year. He was huge in that win. He was absolutely huge. The one win that Eagles had, it was Darius Defoe. Can you keep having the same script or the same narrative when players are getting older and I don't think you can. Now, what I do like of where they're at right now, Coach Mack has proven to me and everyone else that he's a legitimate coach, right? He won 2 pieces of silverware last year. He's recruited a staff as well. Gary Stronach brought me back to the BBL, so he's awesome, right? He's a great coach. He's coached all of us. We know how good Gary Stronach is, and Gary Stronach is a leader of men as well. We all played for Gary Stronach because we respected and we like playing for him. So I think they've got some really exciting things. And let's talk about the signings. Corey Johnson, we've seen him just go absolutely berserk. He is a hands down, man's down type of guy. He will shoot the ball from wherever, everywhere is in range. And you get him on a good night, he'll give you a 40 piece. That's incredibly dangerous. So with Luis Sayers, please don't forget Sayers. I thought he was brilliant last year in certain instances. He made some huge plays and made some huge shots. I just don't know, guys. There's something there. Really, probably tough as a British forward. I shouldn't be, criticizing other British forwards. Really disappointed with Jonathan Thompson so far. I think all you can ask for as a British backup is an opportunity. He has had a phenomenal opportunity this season so far, and he has not maximized it. He hasn't. For whatever reason, he hasn't. And I thought he was really good at Worcester Wolves in some games. I thought that's a guy that could do something this year. I've been really disappointed with him. So I just don't know if they've got enough. Person looks okay to me, looks good. I think he's got that NBA type of game, and if he gets hot, he's incredibly dangerous. But I don't know, guys. I just think if Ramon Fletcher for me is just he's legit. I need him. Sorry, Newcastle Eagles need him to be healthy and do what Ramon Fletcher does. If he's healthy, you've always got a chance to win something because it's Ramon Fletcher. I just don't know if they can be consistent enough.
All legitimate points, my man. And Jay, we both sit here at 4 with the Giants, and I've already pretty much, co-signed for them earlier in the show. So I'll let you take it home for us.
Well, I just think, like you said, we're buying on the Giants right now. We feel like they've constructed the right roster. They've got the right coach. I think Jamie Edwards has done a great job. And I think Ant said it earlier in the show. There just seems to be this buzz about them at the minute that's the right kind of positivity you want around the structure of that team as well. So I think very much to what's Ant saying, I do think it's going to depend on Dan Clark's health, making sure that he stays healthy in long stretches. But that's not all they've got. They do have substance around. It's not just the Dan Clark effect. There's lots of other factors going in there. But I like them. I think that they've got good depth. I think that depth's being used to great effect. And I think that if any of those teams that we've talked about, like I said, going from around that 7 mark coming up to the 4, if anyone's got a chance of just overachieving on their potential, I think it would be the Manchester Giants.
Well said, my man. Well, top 3, where Jay, you got the Newcastle Eagles, and you got the Manchester Giants, and I have the Leicester Riders. And I'll start off here. It was really tough for me to pick them here where, I can argue them winning the league, to be honest. I can argue them finishing 1st, 2nd, or 3rd. My concerns coming into the season was that I felt like Corey Johnson was going to be a bigger loss than what they thought. I felt like the roster wasn't as good on paper, but I am really glued in to Gino Crandell, and here's why. You have a spectacular season. You're pretty much a celebrity in the basketball community. You're all over D's reels, and you win the MVP. And so for me, I'm looking at the little mannerisms. I'm looking at the intricacies of how you handle that. And so far early in this season, I see that he's a lot more aggressive offensively, which is great. He needs to improve his shooting, and I think he was exploited in the semifinals with the lack of outside shooting. And he's actually, being more aggressive there, but the numbers don't prove that he's consistent yet. But I've seen like a lot more bickering at the ref, a little bit more complaining. And so I'm not worried about him from a talent standpoint. That's going to stand out. I'm just thinking of how he handles all of that now that we got fans in the building that's going to want people. People are going to want autographs on the road. So how you navigate all of that at, such a young part of your career. And, Nelson Henry's out. Don't know for how long. He has a boot on his foot. Maybe it's just an ankle. But for me, that's worrisome because although Mo Walker is sliding in really well, what Mo Walker has proven to all of us is that he can't stay healthy. So he's required to play extended minutes, and all that means is just more pounding on that hamstring. And God forbid, you're talking to someone that had a number of hamstring injuries over the course of the career. You could do everything perfectly, and they just go. And once you do it once, they're like a rubber band. The more you stretch it, the looser they get. So I'm concerned there. But I mean, at the same time, I could argue this team winning the league. So, I got them finishing third just because I think last year they had the perfect roster and depth that can overcome everything that comes with winning the league. You got to be able to, it's not just your team. You got to be able to handle so many situations, be consistent, handle the tough times. And, but yeah, I mean, I can argue for them first, but I got them here finishing third. So, and you got the Giants at third, which is huge for a team that didn't even make the playoffs last year.
Yeah, it's I think they've given us enough excitement so far, and they've whetted our appetite enough. I'm really excited about these guys. I think Dan Clark in particular, I quite like where he's at with things as well. I think he's a guy that this is what people don't understand as well. Just because you get paid a substantial amount more money, it doesn't mean you necessarily come to a British Basketball League and dominate. In Europe, you can be really good at three things, okay? You could be really good at hitting an open three-point shot. You can be really good at setting screens, and you can be really good at playing off-ball defense, okay? If you're really good at those three things, you can earn a significant amount of money, 10,000 euros a month, okay? Now, you take a player like that, and you put them in the BBL where you need to be good at 7, 8, 9 things, they cannot adapt. They cannot do it. They can't play to the same level. They average 8 points a game, and you think, dude, you were averaging. You were making £100,000 in ACB last year. You come here, you can't even dominate. I was really worried about that for Dan Clark. He has eased my reservations. He has been brilliant, and I think he kind of part of him has that mentality as well. As I cannot come back to UK and be an average player. I think he has that in him. I look at the way he plays, he has that in him, which is incredibly exciting for the Manchester Giants. You do not want a 6'10" dude happy with averaging 10 points and 5 rebounds. And I think he takes pride in his performances as well, which again, it's priceless. If he stays healthy, they're going to be incredibly difficult to stop. We mentioned they're Americans already. I think their Americans are good. I don't think we've seen the potential of their Americans just because I think some of their opportunities have been shadowed by the British guys playing heavier minutes. I was always a big fan of Josh Steele. I think he's really good, and you've got guys that are from sort of that Manchester area. Again, that it's like Glasgow Rocks and having Scottish players. They buy into the whole, genal structure of what's going on in the Giants. And I've played with Jamal Anderson. I cannot tell you, he is the best teammate in the world because he plays really hard on both ends of the floor, and he is one of the most selfless guys that I've ever played with. He reminds me of you in a sense, Drew, as well. He's the guy that always looks after his body. He's the ultimate professional. He will keep playing basketball until he's 40 years old if he chooses to do so, because that's the type of guy he is. Defensively, he's an absolute animal. 1 through 5, he will cause you absolute problems, and we've already seen it. We've seen him make huge plays down the stretch as well to change games. So I think Jamal Anderson will be huge for those guys as well. And I'm a big fan of Whelan. I think he's got that fearless mentality as well.
Yes.
he's not afraid to make a big shot or a big play. He's got that like little chip on his shoulder too. And there's one player we failed to mention who was pretty freaking good last year, David Oof. You put him on a talent because he doesn't need shots. That guy is a freaking dog. You put him out there, he'll grab 10 rebounds, 20 rebounds, and he'll just go. He's kind of like that Rodman mentality, a worker. He doesn't need to. He can't. He's not a great talented scorer anyway. Naturally scorer. You put him in the equation, you think, goodness me, I don't want to play Giants tonight. You know, he's that type of guy. And I think he can really add something to that team, just because they've got so much more talent this year. So. Yeah, you can probably tell by the tone of my voice, boys. I'm pretty excited about these guys. I think they'll do really well. Yeah, let's see. But yeah, top three for me at the moment, just because of the inexperience. They haven't done what my other top two picks have done in the last decade or so. So yeah, number 3 for me.
Jamie Edwards, please stand up. Jay, Newcastle Eagles at 3rd.
Yeah, Newcastle Eagles at 3rd. Agree with what Ant's saying. I think they've got to go through some adversity, which is quite unusual for them. But I think they'll get all that done early, and then you just got to watch how dangerous they are. So it might be very different to how it was last year, but it will be similar in some respects. You had that big dip in and around the Christmas time going into the new year, and then you had to come back strong. I think that's going to happen early now. So you've had that real big dip. Coach McLeod's got that experience. Like you said, love, seeing Coach Gary Stronach back on the sidelines. We caught up with him in the summer, and we were chatting away to him, and he was saying to us that he's got the bug back again, which is fantastic. So yeah, I think they're going to go through that adversity. I think they'll be better for it. But again, you really cannot undervalue just how much experience matters, and I know, Drew, you're like one of the most humble guys I know, but they've taken that one piece away, and that's a huge piece to have. I don't care if you're not playing minutes or you're playing 20 minutes or what, having you in that locker room was a big piece alongside Fletch and Defoe. How bad is the injury to Fletch? Yes, is going to be huge because, like Tone said, that's a bona fide MVP. I think Darius would be okay. I think he'll go another year, but he shouldn't be shouldering the burdens that he is. So early adversity, but I think they come through it.
And that wraps up teams finishing 3rd. And so we move to the league runner-ups, and I'll start with my Newcastle Eagles. And, maybe this is more of a biased pick because when I look at it, Cortez Edwards, Justin Gordon, did we get better, the same, or worse in those positions? And I think I have to say we got worse. As you can already see, Justin Gordon's position has already been cut, and Cortez Edwards was a triple-double nearly every game. And it was a big relief from Fletch because he could play with the ball in his hands. And I haven't seen that Wes can play with the ball in his hands over long stretches, so I'm concerned about that. But for me, and we didn't win the league last year with those pieces, so I don't see how we will win the league with pieces that are a little bit worse. And I say worse, I mean, they're still great players, so just take that statement with a grain of salt. But the main thing for me, and I've said this all preseason, at the start of the season, is I was really concerned about Ramon Fletcher, because he's carried the load for so long, for so many years. He led the team in scoring and assists for last year. And what I said coming into this season, that Fletch can't go another season carrying a team. And can they play without Fletch on the floor? And I saw it from game 1. I said, nope, they can't play with him not being on the floor. And the reason why I was concerned is because even though last episode or 2 episodes ago I said he was Iron Man, he's only missed 3 practices in 1 game before this recent injury, is that how it all works out, guys. Like, the more minutes you play, the more opportunity you have to get hurt. And so what happens against Sheffield Sharks? They're missing pieces. That's a game they have to win. So he's playing even harder because they're chasing the game. And then, boom, you go down with a freak injury. So I'm not worried as far as, like, his durability because it's not muscular. It's a freak accident. Someone fell on his foot. Anyone can get hurt in that situation. But I'm just thinking that he's more exposed to injury because he still has to carry a heavy load, play a lot of minutes. So, and you brought up a great point, Ant, is never being injured. How does he bounce back from it? Because sometimes you get injured, then it becomes a snowball effect, right? Something else starts hurting, something becomes muscular. This happens. It's just the luck of the draw. I'm not concerned about
psychologically too.
Yeah, good point. So, all of that stuff was worrisome for me coming into the season. But I will say this, I like the fact that McLeod has realized that, hey, we're not good enough in this position and we got to get better. And he pulled the trigger early and he didn't wait. And so they're going to get stronger. But my question is how long is that going to take? What's the situation? Visa's been taking ages unless you bring him in on a visitor visa. How long does he take to fit in? All those things that are risky when you. What's that?
Not allowed to do that anymore. The visitor's visa. It's not allowed.
So,
Not allowed to do it anymore.
So there you go. You've answered my question. So that means that's a couple of weeks away from an American, right? Unless something drastic happens or they pull some strings that we don't know about. So, and then he still has to get in shape and fit in. So, a lot of concerns there. But I would like to believe that the Newcastle Aura will pull through. And I'll leave it with this. This is the one thing I'm worried about with them getting to a slow start is that they've lost the fear factor. They've lost the psychological battle because no one will be scared of them now because they've seen how weak they've started the season. So they're going to have to beat teams this year. They're not going to beat teams because they got Eagles on the jersey, which we would always be able to win a couple of games just because we were the Eagles showing up in all black. So, but hopefully they live up to my expectations and finish second. But Ant, you got the London Lions shockingly finishing runner-up.
I do, Drew. And look, this is the question poses: where do we think they're going to finish in the league? And I think there's going to be there's more room for error for them with distractions, more room for error, I think, with keeping people happy, more room for error where by performances, emotional performances as well. So if they have a real big Wednesday win in Europe, they've got to go to Friday to Leicester, or they've got to go to Friday to up to Newcastle or Manchester, etc. So I just think that I believe the London Lions are better than last year. By the way, I go out there, put my neck on the line. I think they're a better roster. It's a big roster though. That's the same worries I had last year is this year. They've just dealt with it better this year. I feel like I think the coaching staff have dealt with it better this year. But that's not to say there's not going to be problems. I think where they have got an advantage is that you've got Dirk Williams now. He is for me a legitimate MVP contender. I think he has been that next level every single year. He's got a little bit better, and now he's put performances in already that I sit there and think, wow, this guy is legit. There's not too many guys as athletic as him and can shoot the ball as him outside of the NBA. There just isn't. And I think he's really good. Another guy that's already sort of got that MVP tag attached to him is Isaiah Reese. He's tough. He's tough. He's really good. So I think he'll make them a lot better. And there's one guy that's not even in the fray yet, and that's Justin Robinson. We saw him go out injured that last game of last year, and he's still not back yet. There's more in the tank from him. You can't be an MVP by accident in this league, and he's done it. He's been there. So I think he could add another thing. And they've got players this year too that you just don't see in the BBL. You don't see really outside the NBA. In all honesty, Kyler Kelly, the ability that he's 7 foot and he moves really well, and he's athletic, and he contests shots, and he dunks the ball, he runs the floor. He's kind of got all of those attributes that you can't see it in the BBL because you can't afford that. It's really expensive to hire a guy of his caliber. They've got that Kajini. Now where I think they've got good things in the experience with Jordan Williams, is Jordan Williams going to be happy playing 20 minutes in the BBL where he's been used to being a dominant force? Does he start getting upset? Does the other guys start getting upset? That's where I see the fractures coming. And can Vince McCauley and the coaching staff keep those guys on track? Because you win the league, you're the most consistent team over the course of the season, right? I can see frailties in the London Lions team when you compare them to my first pick. And that's why I'm kind of going against the grain. and saying that London Lions may win 3 pieces of silverware and a European, successful European campaign, but I don't think they're going to win the league. And that's why. I don't think that's why I got them at number 2, boys.
And Jay, you got the Leicester Riders as runner-up.
Yeah, this pick makes me nervous because it burnt me last year. And I've kind of been a little bit seduced by this European campaign. I see a little bit more substance to this Lions team. But everything that Ant said is completely valid. My worry with the Riders was that the Loving for Lee situation, it's not a like for like. It's not a direct replacement. I know you can look at him like in terms of body type and stuff like that, but he's a different player. And obviously Corey Johnson leaving, I thought that was a massive loss. A shame, really, because I was really, really enjoying watching him and Jackson play together last year. Like I felt like they had, some real chemistry. Ant loves his chemistry, but you just can't bet against this Riders team. They've got the MVP in Gino, and I know that. You can see those things as being cracks, Drew, but they might also be things a little bit more experience. He knows he's got a little bit more leverage now. He's got a little bit more leeway, and these are all the psychological battles you've got to play in basketball. You're trying to get yourself an extra core and things like that. You're trying to put yourself in a more favorable position. So I think that they're just really, really dangerous. Health is going to be a big one. Like you said, Darian being out is huge. And I hope there's not this like flip flop of, Mo being healthy now this year and they don't get to see the best of Darian, because I think that will derail them. But they're so consistent, guys. They are so consistent. And, they've got that one leg up over London. When I saw that after I'd done predictions, I was like, I know this. Putting Riders second place, I know Coach P's got something for me, so I'm nervous putting them second, but they're there or thereabouts. They're going to put some more trophies in the cabinet because that's what they do.
Yeah, we all know that they'll be around, no matter what competition. They'll be lifting up some type of trophy, and I agree with you on the Geno point. I won't be surprised if he's even better this year. But boys, we wrap up the show here with our league winners. And so Jay and I have the London Lions lifting the trophy, and Ant, we hope is not a biased pick. He has the Leicester Riders, but Jay and I will kick it off, and Ant, you wrap it up with the Riders. But Jay, you start us off. Why the London Lions?
I just think they're better this year. I think that they're better. They're stronger. I like their depth. I think, like you said, the coaching staff has had that experience. So Vince had this embarrassment of riches last year. It was really, really tough. They've absolutely got to keep that on track. So if you remember that things looked really rosy to a certain point, and then things started to just come, the train started coming off the rails a little bit. There was some social media stuff going on in the background, and it all became a distraction. So I like them. I'm not sure we've seen the best of Washburn yet, so I'd like to see him maybe come to the party a little bit more. And it's not about points, guys. There isn't enough going around there for that team. But I think just performance-wise, against Leicester, he kind of went missing, and you just cannot. You have to put if you're going to beat a Riders team, you got to put in a full performance. But I'd like to think that Vince and the coaching staff have learned. They've obviously put in this general manager that's like we know about Brett, is that he's more of a recruit. He's more of a guy getting this team ready for this campaign. Will Europe be a distraction? That's the only question mark. I'll leave on that one. But yeah, I've been sucking again, guys. I'm in. I'm all in. I'm going. I'm putting them in the top spot. I hope I don't. If I regret it this time, I'm out forever. But for now, I'm staying on the Lions train.
Hey, well, I'm right with you. This might be surprising to Newcastle Eagles fans, but I got to be I can't be too biased on this show. I got to be objective, and they just have the best roster. And I can go down the line and talk about how Reese is my favorite to win MVP. Dirk Williams is my runner-up, and how Dirk is leading the league in points and, third in three-point percentage. But I'm not even none of those are my reasons. My reasons is experience is the best teacher. And I believe they learned a lot from last year. And this is a much more humble organization, to the point to where our only criticism of the London Lions is about logos and jerseys. It's not about a player coming on social media and talking, and they are just seem to be much more about business and humble doing so. And they seem like they got a great group there. And the fans might be saying, the Leicester Rider fans might be saying, well, we just beat them the other day, and I actually picked them to Leicester to win that game on a weekly pick. So that's not surprising to me, because you might think that, well, how can this team win 2 games in Europe and then come lose to the Leicester Riders? That means Leicester Riders can do this in Europe. No, basketball doesn't work like that. The reason why the Leicester Riders won is because Rob has been there a long time and he understands habits. London Lions is an organization. They have habits. Vince has habits, whereas some of these European teams, they don't know anything about the London Lions, and so they can get off to a fast start. So that Leicester loss is not surprising to me. It doesn't change my feelings on them winning the league, and I believe it's all just due to infrastructure. You got someone in that's the GM, and you don't have Vince trying to take phone calls, build a team, call the plays, open a club shop. He can focus on one thing, and so I think all of those things that go a long way.
I have a quick question for you though. If we were grading in from 10 to 1, the worst logo in the league, which one would it be?
I mean, come on now. London Lions, we would have talked to them. We'd have talked about them an hour ago. I mean, they would have been out the way. But yeah, I mean, like I said, and I'll say it again, if the London Lions win the league and they do some work in Europe, we will both be saying, hey, Vince, send us a couple of those T-shirts, man. You know what I mean? The club shop will be sold out. We know how this thing works. It's about winning. So
I'm going to make my own T-shirt. I'm going to make my own Lions T-shirt. I'm going to sign it up just to say thanks to them. But come on, Tone. Lead us out.
Yeah,
brother.
wrap us up, man, as we have the Leicester Riders. You have the Leicester Riders win the league.
Leicester Riders will win the league for the simple fact is they have the best coach in the league, right? So if there was a BBL Hall of Fame, Rob Paternoster would already be in it, and he's still active. He's the best coach in the league, and I think he is the best at he's the best at creating most consistent teams, as we saw last year. And we don't talk about this enough as well. I think because there's not enough transparency in the British game, and there's not enough disclosure of player budgets and player wages. But you look at the player budget for the London Lions last year. You look at the player budget for the Plymouth Raiders last year, and and Leicester Riders found a way to trump both of those and were more consistent and won the league. And I don't know what Newcastle Eagles budget was, but if you want to compare and contrast, etc., Leicester Riders found a way to beat all of those teams consistently and finish the league. And a league as well is not getting a good hot run heading to a BBL Cup or a BBL trophy. The league is the course of the time. That's embracing injuries. That's adjusting to playing on a Friday night and having a back-to-back on a Saturday. It's a lot of different variables there that you have to be good at to win a league. And they're the best at that. And I think it's a little bit difficult for the Leicester Riders, because if you're not in the bubble, if you're not a fan, or if you don't appreciate just basketball, if you're more so based on your own teams and your own fan base, you watch your team week in, week out, and you'll see a guy that gets 25, 30 points and he's player of the week. All bar Gino Crandall, there's not really. It's kind of like Diana Ross and the Supremes in that sense, like there's not really stars per se, public stars, but there are stars underneath the bonnet. Please believe me when I tell you that I have the privilege of that's my local team, right? So I do the comms for them on a weekly basis. I've seen guys there. Zach Jackson was injured all last year. He was all last year. Rob Paternoster recruits all across the States, and he chooses to bring back this guy, Zach Jackson. What a reward he's given them already, and you look at the guy last year, maybe like Kipper Nichols in the sense. Zach Jackson plays hard, athletic, plays good defense, averages 10 points a game. Would you bring him back the next year? Probably not. Rob Paternoster has brought this guy back, and he's paying dividends already. Patrick Whelan, keep watching him. He's going to be very good for them. Jabril Adekoya, another guy. was huge today. Yes, it wasn't much of a game, but he's been big in certain points of different games as well. So they've got these guys, Mark Loving as well. I think he's a guy that he's not William Lee per se, like you said, Jay. But he's got that bit about him too. He fancies himself when the game's on the line, when things get a little bit sticky. He's popping up, hitting a pull-up three or making a big play. So you've got guys there. Darian Nelson-Henry will never get the credit he deserves because he plays 20, 21 minutes a game. If you look at what he does in those 20, 21 minutes a game, he is the most efficient player in the whole league. You know, his numbers, 12.7 rebounds in 20 minutes, it's really hard to do. Really hard to do. He does that on a consistent basis. And let's talk about the main guy, Gino Crandell. Okay, you do not come back to the BBL. You do not turn down contracts elsewhere for more money to just do the same as what you did last year. And that excites me. That excites me. I think he is very good at both ends of the floor. That's the difference between him, I think, and a lot of the other guards. He is very good defensively, and he wants to play defense. And he has the best plus or minus in the whole league last year. So when you look at all the players last year, he had the best plus and minus. That is not coincidental, you know, because he plays on both ends of the floor. So I think he's going to be better this year. He has to be better this year. I think if he comes back and he's not better than last year, it was a poor choice of him coming back to the BBL, and he's failed in my opinion. And for that reason, I don't think he's going to fail, and he's going to be. He's not repeat MVP again. Leicester Riders win the league. So that's my case, boys. That's why the Leicester Riders win in my eyes.
No, I love it. And guys, listen, we've gone at it. We've put our necks on the line. Tone, listen, we appreciate you giving us this evening, mate. It's gone on a little bit, but we do like to rabbit a little bit. But it's been fun as always. But hey, we're going to sign out, guys. League predictions are there. We'll have the graphics done. We can't hide now, guys. We'll review them again around Christmas time, as we always do. And hopefully I'll be in the lead. But until then, we're grateful for Big Tone. We're grateful to you guys for listening in. Let us know what you think about your guys' picks. I know there's going to be clubs ready to chime in and tell us where they should be. Always higher, of course. But until then, Drew, lead us out.
Yeah, big fella, thank you for your time tonight. We know we got you past your bedtime on a school night, so we thank you for doing it.
Man.
True story. True story.
but you're the people's champ, man. You do it for the fans, but you know they'll love you for the content. But once that graphic come out, get ready for the firepower, my friend. So they're on the socials. So, but yeah, we like Jay said, go out there and give us who you think, and let's have a friendly debate out there on the socials. So I know our producers will be going at us because we've gone way over, but hey, an episode like this, we had to give you the real deal because it's a once in a season type of content. So hope you guys enjoy. Make sure you guys rate, review, leave a comment, and we will see you guys same place, same time here on the show.
Show.